All right, what's up, Dragon Brood? We are on day 3 of previews, I believe it is. This is Saturday, April 9, and there is a bunch of stuff apparently still got released, so it's weird because sometimes you think when you hit the weekend they're going to slow down, but no, there was actually a bunch of stuff, so we have plenty to talk about. Also, it seems that a lot of you really appreciated me doing the ragtime and jazz background music while we do it, so we'll keep the musical stylings, if you will, and we'll have a good entertaining time looking over these cards. And I've tried not to look at them, so y'all are getting my first initial response as always. So let's go take a look at what we have today in store for the previews on Streets of New Capenna. Okay, I'm sure by now this one has a translation for the name somewhere online, but what they have here says Omniseer Arbiter, but that doesn't seem like the name they would use. But either way, this is a 6 mana, 4 blue, 5/4 avatar creature, flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Whenever you discard a card, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-0 until your next turn, where X is the number of different mana values among cards in your graveyard. I actually don't mind this. I mean, it's a 5/4 for 6, but it does fly. And discarding a card is fine. I mean, you're basically getting to filter 2 cards. That's cool. And truthfully, the ability is not bad. There's a lot of times you're going to have at least 3 different types in the yard, maybe more. So giving their best creature a -3 is actually reasonable. And you should win most battles in the air, I think. So yeah, I don't know. It does say until end of turn, so it doesn't carry over next turn. But yeah, it's okay. Not stellar. I'm not sold and this is super good. But I feel like maybe combined with other abilities, maybe with reanimation type stuff, this can fuel a few things that aren't so obvious on its face. So it feels like the type of card that's not going to be great, but if it finds a home, it's going to be really good in that deck that it's in. Man, this image they have is not great. Right, another expensive blue card. We have Cut Your Losses, 4 colorless blue. Rare sorcery, casualty 2, that you can discard something power 2 or greater to copy it. Target player mills half their library rounded down. Now, okay. Alright. Let's have a talk here, because some of y'all are new to Magic. Not new to me, but maybe some of you are new to me. This isn't as good as it looks. First off, we already have other things that mill a ton of cards and just do a better job at doing what this card's trying to do, right? We know that. And there are cards like Traumatize that already did similar. Traumatize was just mill half of your library, whatever. And I've literally won games, no lie, where I got Traumatized 3 times. Because what you have to understand is after the first milling, the other ones aren't nearly as many cards. You might actually hit more with Tasha's Hideous Laughter than you would actually hit with Cut Your Losses. So that's something else to consider, especially depending on the type of decks you're playing against and what the format looks like. And this also costs 6. I mean, that's not cheap. Now, admittedly, if I have, let's say we're at the point of the game where I've got 40 cards left in my library, okay, cool, you mill me down to 20, you mill me down to 10, but you did also spend 6 mana and have the creature that you gave up that you somehow, for whatever reason, weren't blocking with along the way when you're being attacked on your way to 6 mana in a mill deck. So, I don't know. But we also could be in a world, too, where there's a few more things that care about the graveyard, as we saw with the Arbiter we just reviewed. Plus, there's a lot of things that are trying to put stuff in the graveyard because of Connive, the new mechanic. So people might actually be playing out of the graveyard, and you could also be assisting them. So I don't know if this is really good. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like this card's miserable or anything. But if you look at the current mill decks, what are you really replacing with this card, right? You have Maddening Cacophonies already. You've got Tasha's Hideous Laughter. You've got the Crab. You've got, you already have a quality package of mill thing. Maybe you play one of this card, maybe 2. But even from me, somebody who doesn't like mill decks, I'm not even remotely panicking over this card. Join the Maestros, 4 colorless and a black, sorcery, casualty 2, same thing, sack something to a greater, copy it, create a 4/3 black ogre warrior creature token. The warrior creature token doesn't even come with any abilities. It doesn't have menace, it doesn't have death touch, doesn't have first strike. Yeah, this is just a bulk common. Reasonable and limited if you just gotta have it. You can upgrade one of your earlier creatures into a 4/3. That's about it. Not much else to say about this one. Alright, we've got a Fairy Vandal, just a very simple name. Colorless and a blue for a 1/2 creature, fairy, rogue, flash, flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on fairy Vandal. We've seen this card before. It's fine. I will say this, it is a rogue. So if you're still into that, there's a little bit of time to still get your rogue on. I mean, having to draw your second card, that's a little harder to do. It's fine. It's a playable card. The thing I will say is at least gets a counter, and it's not a +1/+1 until end of turn, and that makes a pretty big difference. So there are some spots where this could go into a deck and still be viable. So yeah, I wouldn't turn my nose up at this entirely. It's just not an exciting card, but it is a quality uncommon. All right, we've got Snooping Newsy, a black-blue 2/2 human rogue. When Snooping Newsy enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. As long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, Snooping Newsy gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. All right, this is pretty cool. And again, another rogue. So now, admittedly, I don't know if this wants your graveyard to have cards more than your opponent's graveyard to have cards. So I don't know if this fits in the same type of rogue deck of what you would be trying to build, but I actually appreciate this. I think it's a pretty cool little card. Just a solid common, not stellar, but solid. Could have some uses in a few places. Also happens to be a human. I don't know if that's going to be important. All right, Mage's Attendant, 2 colorless and a white, 3/2. When Mage's Attendant enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 blue wizard creature token with 1. Pay 1 colorless, sacrifice this creature, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. This is pretty okay. Again, another rogue, which by the way, I guess we should have expected a lot of rogues to be in the set because it's a bunch of underhanded underworld things, but whatever. This is actually a really good card, surprisingly. I mean, it's a 3/2 for 3, which isn't bad on its own, but then it does make you another creature. So you're paying 3 to effectively get 4 power and 3 toughness worth of creatures, which is pretty spectacular. But you can also now force your opponent to have to play around things because you're getting a little bit of extra security in this 1/1 you could sacrifice. I'm into it. I mean, you get a 4 spike on a creature that you can actually fight with. I'm into it. This is cool. A cat rogue too, just a neat creature type. But yeah, I kind of like this card. This is better than some of the rares in several sets, honestly. Depending on where it finds a home, this could be pretty cool. All right, here we have Rob the Archives, a colorless and a red, sorcery, uncommon, casualty 1. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those this turn. Okay, so we've had a couple of versions of this recently. This has become like the red thing to do, right? Exile some things, and maybe you can play them or whatever. It is a sorcery, but it does say until, well, no, it says this turn, so not even until your next turn. Yeah. So if you need really at least 4 or 5 mana before you play this, so you can make use of the cards on top. My concern with this is like, you can sacrifice a creature, which red usually has something you can toss away that you don't need in the later stages of the game. But how many of those cards can you actually use at one time, right? Like, so if you did this for the first 2, you sack a thing, you get to look at 4 cards. Like, how many of those 4 are you expecting to play? Maybe 1 or 2. But I do like this as a late game option when, say you've got 6-8 mana and you top deck this and your opponent's at like 5 and you're just trying to find the final burn spells. Being able to dig 4 cards deeper is pretty damn cool. So I think it can have uses. I don't know if it's better than, Reckless, whatever, the other thing we have. That's an option right now. Plus you have Chandra that can do it. And I believe there's one other card. And then there's another, was there something else that was previewed yesterday or the day before that also lets us exile things? So there's a few versions of this. I don't know if this is going to be able to squeeze room in with some of the others being instants or letting you carry the cards over an additional turn. Some of those things do matter, but yeah, it's not bad. I think this could be used. I just don't know if it's as good as a lot of the other versions of it that will still have standard legal. All right, this is Errant Street Artist, or that's the translation anyway. It's a 1 blue 0/3 creature, defender, haste. Wow, all right. 1 blue and a colorless, tap. Copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is likely intended to be used with Casualty or anything else that you get to play for free. I mean, I guess because we have Hideaway and some other stuff. I mean, you're not... Well, no, that's not true, because even Hideaway, I think you cast it. So yeah, it would have to be something that you've copied effectively that you didn't pay that extra cost for. Now, maybe this goes into some of the mill decks, right? Because they're trying to copy their mill spells, so you can get a third copy. And it's an 0/3, so it can actually block fairly well. So maybe it finds a home in those types of decks. But yeah, this is it's an interesting card to say the least. How great? I don't know. It's a very specific use, but yeah, it's neat. I don't have a problem with this card existing. This is kind of cool. Luxurious Libation. Oh, they're trying to get the top shelf stuff at the club. Bring over the whole bottle of Cavassier. X in a green. It's an instant, uncommon. Target creature gets +X/+X till end of turn. Create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. I mean, we've had versions of this before, but this one comes with a 1/1 creature. I don't think I understand the flavor of this card. Like, is your creature getting drunk at the party and then ends up with a baby? Is that what we're doing? Like, because I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure out, why does it just go, like, why does the title, like, it's a drink and you just end up with a 1/1? I don't understand. It's weird. It doesn't have to mean anything. You know, I'm just saying, usually the cards and the names and stuff like make sense with the mechanics, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. That being said, is this even a playable card? Maybe. I mean, there are some worlds where, you know, a creature gets through, and if you could pump it for 3 or 4, that's probably going to be good enough. I think the problem is we already have creature lands like Hydra that we're already putting a bunch of mana into. This can still be countered, obviously. Do you play like a 1-of and use it as a fireball type effect? Maybe, but I don't expect it to see a lot of play, honestly. But I will say this, because this is now, I think, the 3rd card we've seen, maybe 4th, that mentions a citizen token. That is a little bit of a thing, and if so, maybe this is the type of card those decks would want, because you get credit for putting creatures into play, which can trigger stuff. Plus, you're going to be going wide, and the odds of you getting a creature through is higher, so something like this could make the cut in those lists. So, not saying it's going to great card, it's going to be truly playable, but if that is a real strategy, maybe there's a spot for this card. Well, I wondered who previewed this, because that looks like old Jim Davis's head. I just guess. I bet you if I go check the internet, that's a Jim Davis head.
A few moments later.
All right, because of the magic of editing, I checked the internet. That's a Jim Davis head. Anyway, this is an Unlucky Witness, 1 red mana for a 1/1 human citizen. And again, there's another human citizen we were just talking about. When Unlucky Witness dies. Why is this not Unlucky Citizen if it's a citizen? Why is it unlucky? I mean, I guess for flavor. They saw something, so now they're getting murdered. When Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library until end of your next end step. You may play one of those cards. Okay, so see, again, this is another one of those mechanics we were just talking about. While red's exiling the top of your cards, and you have the option to play those. And this is a little bit different because you can leave it out there, you can block, then you reveal the cards. If there's an instant you can play, then you can play it. And then the card still lasts until your end step. So that's what I'm saying with that other red card we just previewed. Like, I don't know if that has a home when there's a bunch of these other cards that already do that. However, it is pretty sweet to know that, like, you could be playing a red deck that's going to churn through its deck very quickly. And that's a little bit exciting that that's a little something different than what we've been able to do with red decks. And this is a quality little 1/1 that gets you some value later. So yeah, possibly playable. I don't know. There's a lot of good 1 mana things in red right now, 1s and 2s. Maybe doesn't have a home, but the idea is at least entertaining. The translation I have here on this one is Ballroom Fighters. It's a 5 mana, so 3 colorless white for a 3/5. I'm not sure on the creature types here. It is an uncommon. Whenever it attacks and up to 1 other target creature you control, both gain your choice of lifelink or first strike until end of turn. Okay, so whenever this card attacks and up to 1 other target creature you control, they gain lifelink or first strike. This seems kind of fun for limited, actually. This seems like a pretty good card. It's a 3/5 body, so it's going to be hard for your opponent to punch through. And then when you attack, you could give something else first strike, which is kind of cool. And your opponent's likely going to have to block with something bigger or two small things on this. And if you have any way to pump it, it becomes a real nuisance. Now, for 5 mana, I don't think any of the current white decks in constructed formats are going to want to play it. We just have too many other things to consider that are 4 and 5 mana. That, I mean, I don't think you're just going to look at this at all, especially with like Elspeth and some other stuff existing. This is definitely just going to get the boot. It's a neat card, and the artwork's kind of cool, but realistically, this one isn't going to see much play. Graveyard Shift. Kind of surprised we hadn't used that name in Magic before. 4 colorless and a black sorcery, uncommon. This spell has flash as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ooh, this I like. Daddy need, daddy gotta have it, right? Like, this is really cool because if you're playing any type of reanimator strategy, and this is kind of what we were just talking about before with the mill card, right? Like, with Connive and all this other stuff, and we already have a bunch of things that could filter cards to your graveyard. This becomes a real thing because 5 or more mana values is a lot, but not really that unreal, considering that there's a fair amount of things where decks are going to be playing 2, 3, and 4. You're probably going to have at least one reanimator spell of some type that's a 5. And then, of course, your big creatures are going to be 6, 7, 8, right? Because you're trying to reanimate. So there is a good chance you could have this as an, like, I don't even know if there's ever been an instant speed reanimation spell. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is kind of cool. What was that move? I just like did the Pearl Clutch thing. What the hell? Like, I'm like, is that how excited I am? I don't know. This card's pretty cool, though. Admittedly, it costs 5. You know, like, you can still use it on your turn as a sorcery if you need to, whatever. But the idea that you could have a flash creature is pretty big. Like, your opponent could tap out trying to do some stuff, say against a aggro deck, and then you like, boom, put Toxtrol in during their end step, or like maybe, you know, after they cast their last creature. So that way you're giving everything a -1 on their turn. Boom, you take your turn, everything gets -1. Before they get their turn back, they've already lost like 3 creatures and you have some slugs, right? Maybe you do that during their end step, you get some big creature in. On your turn, you either get stuff out of the way or you do something to enhance that creature, get a big attack in and get its ability. So yeah, Graveyard Shift. Yeah, I didn't even... This is why I like looking at cards with you, because y'all are getting my genuine surprise on this card. Yeah. Like, I already like trying at least 1 or 2 Reanimator decks a season. Definitely going to be putting this into some of those lists. This is cool. All right, and this looks like our last one for the day in Evolving Door. It's a 2 colorless and a green rare artifact. Pay 1 and tap it. Sacrifice a creature. Count the colors of the sacrificed creature. Then search your library for a creature card that's exactly that many colors +1. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast the exiled card, activate only as a sorcerer. This card is weird. Okay, so it's asking us to pay 3 for this artifact. You pay 1, you tap it, you sacrifice something, whatever something is. You count the number of colors. So if it's just green, let's say you're getting rid of a 1/1 green something, you can now search for something that's exactly that many colors +1. So it has to be a 2-color thing that you're gonna go get. And then you can cast the exiled card. But it doesn't say for free, it doesn't say for no cost. So like, you just get the access to cast it. So you need its mana value +1 available, because you need the 1 to sacrifice it and then be able to play it. I mean, this feels like it's a very specific reason you want this. Like some tutoring effect to get a certain creature or a certain card that, like, if you have a deck that's built around like 2 different creatures, right? That, you know, maybe you have 4 of each. This could be a tool to go get those, to make sure you increase the odds of you drawing them when you need them. So that's actually pretty cool. Unfortunately, you can also only activate this as a sorcery, which feels like it's asking a lot of this card. But the more I think about it, I'm thinking this may not be a standard card. This might be something you're playing in older formats and taking advantage of the card selection that's available. However, one thing I will point out is you could play some variety of rogues with this card. Now, admittedly, you'd have to splash green, but we do have the lands to allow us to do this. Not saying you should, but outside the box for a second here, while we're just speculating. But if you were to get rid of some early 1/1 or 2/2, could you go get a rogue that pumps your team? Could you go get the one that mills your opponent? Could you go get, what's his name? The one that like can steal stuff from graveyards, right? If we had a 3-mana thing, or I guess it'd have to be a 4-mana thing that we can go rid of for it. I doubt it, but stuff like that might be a possibility, where some number of the cards in the deck are already multicolor cards. But because we're in Capenna, there are going to be several cards that are 2 and 3 colors. So, here's the other thing too that we have to think about this. Normally when we get this type of effect, it's usually casting costs, right? So we trade a 2 for a 3 or whatever. We're actually not worried about cost. We're worried about colors. So I misspoke a second ago, thinking about we had to have a 4 to get a 5. You actually don't. You actually need just colors. So that does change the value of this card. Because if we're playing, I don't know, even some Gruul deck or whatever, right? Maybe you were swapping some small early creature to go get some 4 or 5 mana thing you want that can just help finish the game. Or some multicolored dragon or whatever, right? Or even just your late game creature. Maybe this is a thing that you want to guarantee you get that top end creature, whatever it is. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is something that helps the party decks, right? Because you can guaranteed go get your Linvalas and stuff. I don't know. This card might be better. Like I think I talked myself into this card being reasonably playable in the last like 2 minutes. So yeah, the card may not be outstanding, but I think it's actually going to be, you know what? I'm coming back to this. I think when I first saw this card and read it, my first thought was like, this card's like a 3.5. Now I'm talked up to this card being like a 7. So there you go. Make of it what you will. All right. It looks like those are all the previews we have today. And yeah, this was a pretty good bunch. There was at least 3 or 4 in there that I was just like, oh yeah, we could build around that. Oh, that card's really cool. We got cool reanimator stuff. We got some tutoring stuff. We got a couple of quality creatures. Like now we're starting to see the set filled out a little bit, starting to see some different mechanics coming together. And like I said, the citizen thing might be a thing. There's a lot of cool little stuff happening. And oddly, today was mostly monocolor cards. I think we had 2 cards, that were multicolor. So it's actually pretty cool that even despite this being a really multicolor heavy set, we do have a fair amount of single color cards. So you're not going to be obligated to having to play 3 colors if you don't want to. So that's something else to note. So good job to R&D on that. But hey, let me know if you liked anything today. Did I get too excited? Did I not get excited enough? Did you hate the music? Whatever. I welcome your comments because we're going to have at least 5 more days of this. So I want to make these as entertaining and useful to you as possible. Let me know what you think down below. Also remember, check out the memberships, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, choose all notifications. That's all I have for you for now. We will see you next time.